2020 is fast approaching, and Hollywood's major studios have lined up a slew of projects to compete for your film-going dollar. Some of the upcoming releases on the calendar are highly anticipated sequels, but that isn't all we're expecting to see. Kristen Stewart has come a long way since Twilight. Only 2 months after appearing as Sabina in Elizabeth Banks' 2019 Charlie's Angels reboot, Stewart is set to star in Underwater, a film about an underwater research crew who find themselves trapped following a devastating earthquake. Although it isn't slated for release until January 10th, Underwater actually finished production back in 2017, before co-star TJ Miller's career was quite in the shambles it is now. And as much as one might want to compare it to other sci-fi thrillers like Alien or The Abyss, Stewart told Entertainment Weekly that there's more to it than that. According to her, it's a really dark, scary meditation on isolation. Stewart won't be entirely isolated in the film, though. Underwater's cast also includes Vincent Cassel, Jessica Henwick, John Gallagher Jr., Mamando Ache, and Gunnar Wright. It's directed by William Eubank, whose sophomore film The Signal premiered at Sundance in 2014. If it feels like you're having a deja vu film experience with 2020's The Grudge, you aren't alone. Based on the 2002 Japanese horror movie Ju-on, The Grudge had its first American adaptation back in 2004, which starred Buffy the Vampire Slayer herself, Sarah Michelle Gellar. The 2004 Grudge was rated PG-13, likely as a means of appealing to the largest Halloween crowd possible. However, this new Grudge iteration will head into theaters with a hard R rating. Starring John Cho, Andrea Riseborough, Damian Bashir, Betty Gilpin, Lynn Shane, and Jackie Weaver, The Grudge tells the story of a house cursed by the spirit of a vengeful, deadly presence. Rest assured, however, that although The Grudge will center on an entirely new cast of characters, there will still be some callbacks to prior films for the longtime fans. Prepare to get spooked when it arrives on January 10th. If Guy Ritchie's more recent genre-specific film exploits have had you questioning his appeal as a director, fear not. Ritchie is getting back to his crime caper roots with The Gentleman, which hits theaters on January 24th. The film's trailer seems to promise drugs, double crosses, classic Ritchie dialogue, and duplicity. In other words, it sounds like a return to form for the director of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. Starring Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam, Michelle Dockery, Henry Golding, Colin Farrell, and Hugh Grant, The Gentleman is the kind of action film we've been wanting to see from Ritchie for years. In the aftermath of her family's untimely death, Stephanie Patrick, played by Blake Lively, heads towards self-destruction. When she discovers the plane crash that killed her loved ones was orchestrated, she takes it upon herself to enact revenge upon those responsible. The Rhythm section, which was originally supposed to have made it into theaters at the beginning of 2019, marks only the third feature for cinematographer-turned-director Reed Morano. Morano's made a name for herself on the small screen, though, having done work on The Handmaid's Tale and Billions. The Rhythm section is written by Mark Burnell, who's adapted his own novel for the big screen. The film looks to be something between a spy thriller and a revenge thriller, with a strong female lead. While Lively has done action films in the past, this will be her first time actually heading up this kind of major studio action movie. Rounding out the cast are Jude Law, Sterling K. Brown, and Richard Brake, and the Rhythm section arrives in theaters on January 31st. The 19th century German fairy tale about a young pair of siblings who find themselves lost in the woods and end up the dinner target of a witch has certainly seen its fair share of film adaptations. Generally speaking, none have been particularly outstanding, and some, like 2013's Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, have gone so far off the rails that it's just sort of laughable. But come January 31st, we'll get a pretty straightforward on-screen version of the story. Sophia Lillis, who played the younger version of Beverly Marsh in the It films, leads the cast as Gretel, while Sam Leakey makes his feature film debut as her younger brother Hansel. Genre veteran Alice Krieger takes on the role of the witch Hulda. Gretal and Hansel marks only the third film by director Oz Perkins. His previous works are The Blackcoat's Daughter and I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Aside from its character swap title, Gretal and Hansel looks to be an incredibly creepy, true to its source material feature. The terror of isolation is having a real moment in the horror genre. Films like 2016's Hush or 2019's Midsummer present a kind of fear that's compounded by the fact that there is quite literally nowhere to run. So too does The Lodge, which centers on soon-to-be stepmom Grace as she struggles to discover the truth behind a mysterious and terrifying presence in a snowed-in remote village. The Lodge is as much a story about a troubled young woman trying to make a connection with her fiancé's less-than-enthusiastic kids as it is about the creepy monster hiding in the snowstorm. Grace has a difficult past, and it's hard to tell how much of what's happening to her in the present is a direct result of it. You'll just have to see it for yourself to find out on February 7th. Ben Affleck reunites with his The Accountant director Gavin O'Connor for The Way Back, a movie that's half an inspirational feel-good story about a man struggling with alcoholism and half a sports drama about a high school basketball team that's fallen from glory. In other words, pretty much nothing like The Accountant. The Way Back is written by Brad Inglesby, whose previous credits include 2013's Out of the Furnace and 2019's The Friend. The Way Back did experience a development hurdle back in August 2019, when the film had its original October 2019 release date pushed back to March 6, 2020. The date change gave The Way Back the opportunity to avoid having to go up against Warner Brothers' already heavy fall 2019 slate, which included It Chapter 2 and Joker. It'll also allow the basketball-centric film to capitalize on the start of March Madness. Nearly 2 decades after we first saw charming, idealistic law student Elle Woods demonstrate the perfect bend and snap, Reese Witherspoon is set to reprise one of the biggest roles of her career with Legally Blonde 3. Witherspoon won't be the only familiar face returning for the threequel. It seems as though most of the original film's creative team is signed on as well. Currently, not a whole lot is known about the film. It's yet to secure a director, and specific plot details are being kept under wraps. Chances are good that Legally Blonde 3 will be in line with the 2 previous movies, centering on Elle Woods' ability to overcome adversity through optimism, ingenuity, and sheer determination. The idea with this one is that it will most likely focus on female empowerment, hopefully introducing the franchise to a new audience when the new installment comes out on May 8th.
Harvard. Law school.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
Coming July 3rd, 2020 is Free Guy, an action comedy directed by Stranger Things' Sean Levy and starring Ryan Reynolds, who might be the only actor to ever play the same character twice with completely opposite results. Free Guy tells the story of Guy, played by Reynolds, a bank teller who comes to find out that he is a non-playable background character in a brutal and violent video game. The film also stars Taika Waititi, Jodie Comer, and Joe Keery, and is written by Matt Lieberman and Zach Penn. There are 2 big noteworthy reunions happening with Free Guy. The first is between Keery and Levy, who have a long-running history on Netflix's hit series Stranger Things. But there's also the on-screen reunion between Reynolds and Waititi, who appeared together once before in 2011's Green Lantern.
A racetrack.
Yeah.
That's the best you could come up with for your first big appearance. Racetrack.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I disappoint you?
Disney has a long history of adapting its theme park rides into blockbuster movies. Pirates of the Caribbean turned a 15-minute boat ride into a film franchise that spans 5 films and soon a reboot. Of course, it would only make sense for the House of Mouse to want to expand on its ride-to-movie franchise opportunities before Disney parks are comprised solely of movie-based attractions. The Jungle Cruise ride is a favorite for weary park-goers who are looking to take a break and listen to some cheap jokes for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, the Jungle Cruise movie looks like it could be another franchise hit when it arrives on July 24th, with a fresh spin on the ride's cornball one-liners courtesy of star Dwayne Johnson. The actor was originally announced for the film back in 2015, but development on Jungle Cruise took its time. Co-star Emily Blunt wasn't cast until 2018. The film's official synopsis promises to add a supernatural element to the riverbound tale, which is right up director Jaume Colette Serra's alley. He's responsible for both Orphan and the 2005 remake House of Wax. Just before Halloween 2020 hits, we'll be getting the 3rd installment of the Conjuring universe's flagship series. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga will both reprise their roles as Ed and Lorraine Warren, although James Wan, who was behind the camera for both The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, is sitting out directorial duties this time around. He's still on board as a producer, though, with The Curse of La Llorona director Michael Chavez taking the helm. The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It is inspired by the first time in U.S. history that a murder suspect would claim demonic possession as a defense. That would be the story of Arnie Cheyenne Johnson, who was put on trial for the murder of his landlord following a failed exorcism attempt. He claimed to have been possessed at the time of the killing. We'll have to see if the devil really did make him do it when The Conjuring 3 arrives on September 11th. Venom may not have been a critical success, but it wasn't long after its 2018 release that rumors began to circulate regarding the film's inevitable sequel. That was confirmed in January 2019, and by August, Andy Serkis had signed on as the film's director. Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson, and Michelle Williams will all return for Sony's second round with the famous Marvel symbiote, while Naomi Harris is rumored to be taking on the role of Shriek, Carnage's deadly partner. If the rumors are true, that could mean big things for Sony's Spider-Verse. In the comics, Shriek's team-up with Carnage ultimately led to a face-off between Spider-Man and Venom, along with a whole bunch of other superheroes. How the whole thing inevitably unfolds will likely have a lot to do with the fragile relationship between Sony and Marvel. If the two studios manage to work things out, Venom 2 could be setting up the framework for a huge crossover when it arrives in theaters on October 2nd. One thing we know for sure about Venom 2:
when I get out of here, and I will, there's gonna be carnage.
When David Gordon Green and Danny McBride rebooted the Halloween franchise in 2018, they took a huge risk. The new film retconned everything that had happened in the franchise following the original 1978 film and picked up 4 decades later, in a world where former babysitter Laurie Strode had spent a lifetime preparing for another confrontation with her masked stalker. But according to McBride, their leap of horror faith could have been an even bigger one. Apparently, the pair had originally planned to pitch 2 films to be shot back-to-back. They ultimately decided against it, but shortly after Halloween opened to both critical and commercial success, 2 more films were confirmed. Slated for October 16th, Halloween Kills will see Curtis again reprise her role as Laurie Strode, along with Judy Greer as Laurie's daughter Karen and Andy Matichek as Laurie's granddaughter Allison. It will also bring the return of several of the franchise's original characters. 1978 babysitting charges Tommy and Lindsay are back and all grown up, with Kyle Richards returning as Lindsay, while Anthony Michael Hall takes the role of Tommy. Nancy Stevens and Charles Cyphers are coming back too, reprising their respective roles of Nurse Marion Chambers and Sheriff Lee Brackett. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.